If you had asked me 5 years ago if I was happy, I would have lied. I would have forced a smile, made some self-deprecating joke, and changed the subject before anyone could look too closely. I had perfected the art of pretending I was fine, pretending I was confident, pretending I didn't care. But deep down, in the quiet moments when no one was around, I knew the truth. I was miserable. I was 34 years old, living in Austin, Texas, a city that practically screamed health and adventure. Everywhere I looked, people were jogging, biking, and sipping green smoothies like it was second nature. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my car outside a drive-thru, debating whether I should order 2 meals just so the cashier wouldn't think all that food was for me. I had made my world small. Safe. Predictable. I worked as a project manager for a marketing firm, and I had become an expert at staying busy enough to ignore my own reality. My routine was simple: wake up, go to work, come home, scroll through social media, watch TV, eat whatever was convenient, and fall asleep dreading the next day. Weekends weren't much different, except for the fact that I had even more time to sit with my thoughts, which is why I usually distracted myself with food. I avoided mirrors, cameras, and even catching my reflection in store windows. The few pictures I did take were carefully posed, with my body half hidden behind friends or cropped just above my waist. I lived in loose, dark clothing, anything to minimize myself, to disappear into the background. I dreaded invitations to weddings or parties where I'd have to dress up, because shopping for clothes was humiliating. I told my friends I just wasn't into fashion, but the truth was, I couldn't stand the dressing rooms, the harsh lighting, the tight waistbands, the way nothing ever fit quite right. At my heaviest, I was 265 pounds. But it wasn't just about the number on the scale, it was what came with it. The exhaustion, the aching joints, the way I had to catch my breath after walking up a single flight of stairs. I would watch other people move so effortlessly, running, dancing, laughing, and I envied them. Not just for their bodies, but for their freedom. And the worst part? I had done this to myself. My doctor had warned me. High blood pressure. Prediabetes. A body that was struggling under the weight I was forcing it to carry. I was only 34, but I felt like I was decades older. Even with all the warning signs, I stayed stuck. Stuck in my habits. Stuck in my fears. Stuck in the belief that change was impossible. I had tried before, more times than I could count. Every New Year's resolution, every fad diet, every gym membership that I paid for but barely used. I would start strong, full of hope and determination, but the moment it got hard, I quit. I told myself I just wasn't disciplined enough, that I was meant to be this way, that people like me didn't get happy endings. Because deep down, I didn't believe I deserved one. Dating? I had given up on that a long time ago. I convinced myself that love was for other people, thinner people, prettier people. I would scroll through dating apps, swiping left over and over, not because I wasn't interested in anyone, but because I assumed they wouldn't be interested in me. On the rare occasion that I did go on a date, I spent the whole time overanalyzing everything. Was he embarrassed to be seen with me? Was I taking up too much space? Did I look even bigger sitting down? So, I stopped trying. Friendships? They suffered too. I started pulling away, making excuses to avoid social events. I hated how I looked in every picture, hated how exhausted I felt after just a couple of hours out. Slowly, without even realizing it, I had isolated myself. I told myself I was fine being alone. That I enjoyed my own company. But the truth was, I was lonely. I used food as my comfort, my distraction, my escape. I ate when I was sad, when I was bored, when I was stressed. And the worse I felt about my body, the more I ate, like I was punishing myself for not being stronger. The cycle was endless, and I was trapped in it. I had lost so much more than just my energy and confidence. I had lost my sense of self. And yet, I stayed stuck. Because change meant work. Change meant discipline. Change meant failing again. And I was so tired of failing. So, I convinced myself that this was my life. That some people just weren't meant to be happy, and maybe I was one of them. I remember one particular night, sitting alone in my apartment with a fast food bag in my lap. I wasn't even hungry, I had eaten dinner earlier, but the habit of eating while watching TV was automatic. I took a bite, barely tasting it, and scrolled mindlessly through my phone. My thumb hovered over a photo of a high school friend. She was on vacation, standing in a swimsuit on a beach, laughing, her hair blowing in the wind. Something in me cracked. I used to be like that. I used to love the ocean, love being outside. I used to feel light. Not just in weight, but in spirit. When was the last time I had felt that way? I glanced around my apartment, taking in the empty takeout containers, the half-finished bottles of soda, the clothes I hadn't bothered folding. My life wasn't just heavy, it was stagnant. That night, I cried. Hard. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body, the kind that makes you realize just how much you've been holding in. I wasn't okay. I wasn't living. And for the first time in years, I admitted to myself that I wanted more. I wanted to change. I had no idea how, and I was terrified I would fail again. But something had shifted. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Then, everything changed. And it all started with one moment. One moment that would shake me to my core and force me to face the truth. The morning after my breakdown, I woke up feeling raw. My eyes were swollen from crying, my head ached, and my body felt heavy, not just from the weight I carried, but from the years of exhaustion, the weight of avoiding my own reflection, the burden of pretending I was okay. For a moment, I almost fell back into my routine. I reached for my phone, ready to scroll through social media and distract myself from the painful realization I had come to the night before. But something stopped me. I had admitted, for the first time, that I wasn't okay. That I wanted more. That I needed more. Now what? I sat up, staring at my bedroom mirror, which I usually avoided at all costs. I forced myself to look. Really look. I didn't just see my body, I saw my sadness. My loneliness. My fear. And beneath it all, I saw something else. A spark. A whisper of the woman I used to be. I had no idea where to begin. The thought of starting another diet, another workout plan, another attempt at change, it terrified me. What if I failed? What if I wasted my time again? What if I stayed exactly the same? But then another thought crept in. What if I didn't? What if, this time, it was different? Taking a deep breath, I did something I hadn't done in years. I got up, walked to my closet, and put on a pair of sneakers. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had to start moving. It was a mild, cloudy morning in Austin. I stepped outside and took a deep breath, the cool air shocking my lungs. My body felt stiff and slow, but I started walking anyway. Just one foot in front of the other. I wasn't doing this to burn calories or get skinny. I just needed to feel something different. At first, my steps were hesitant. My body protested, my knees ached, my breath was uneven. But I kept going. 5 minutes turned into 10. 10 into 20. By the time I got back to my apartment, my heart was pounding, and my legs felt weak. I collapsed onto the couch, sweat dampening the back of my shirt. I wasn't proud of how exhausted I felt after just a short walk. But for the first time in a long time, I was proud that I had done something. It wasn't much. But it was a start. That night, I did something even scarier than walking. I researched. I knew how to lose weight. Everyone does. Eat better. Move more. Simple in theory, impossible in execution. But something told me that if I was going to make this work, I needed to do it differently. I spent hours reading about small, sustainable changes instead of extreme diets. I learned about habits, how tiny shifts could lead to long-term results. For the first time, I realized that maybe my problem wasn't my lack of willpower, but the way I had been going about change. Every time I had tried to lose weight in the past, I had gone all in. Cut out sugar. Cut out carbs. 2-hour workouts. Obsess over the scale. And every time, I burned out. So, what if this time, I didn't do that? What if I focused on small wins? What if I simply aimed to be 1% better every day? The idea felt manageable. Possible. So, the next morning, I walked again. And the morning after that. And the morning after that. The first few weeks were hard. My body was sluggish, uncooperative. My legs ached, my breathing was heavy, and I had to fight the urge to quit every single day. I wasn't seeing results, and that frustrated me. But for the first time, I didn't give up. Instead of focusing on weight loss, I focused on building a routine. Instead of obsessing over the scale, I paid attention to how I felt. I started cooking at home more, choosing slightly healthier options instead of forcing myself onto a restrictive diet. I swapped soda for sparkling water, replaced my afternoon fast food runs with homemade lunches. Tiny changes. Barely noticeable at first. But they were adding up. 1 month in, I realized something shocking. I felt different. I wasn't lighter yet, but I had more energy. My morning walks weren't as exhausting. I didn't feel out of breath climbing the stairs to my apartment. My clothes weren't looser, but they felt different on my body. And most of all, I was proud of myself. For the first time in years, I was following through on something. That's when I knew, this wasn't just about weight loss anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could change. I started going to the gym, but I took it slow. No crazy workouts. No unrealistic expectations. I walked on the treadmill. I lifted light weights. I watched other people move with ease, feeling both intimidated and inspired. At first, I felt out of place. The gym was full of fit, athletic people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, I was struggling to figure out how to adjust the machines without looking clueless. But I kept showing up. And something amazing happened. No one was watching me. No one cared that I wasn't lifting heavy weights. No one laughed when I had to stop to catch my breath. Everyone was too busy focusing on themselves. For the first time, I realized that the only person judging me was me. And maybe, just maybe, I could stop. The months that followed were a blur of small victories and setbacks. There were days I felt unstoppable, when I finished a workout feeling strong, when I noticed my face looked less puffy in the mirror, when my jeans fit a little looser. And then there were the hard days. Days when I slipped back into old habits. Days when I ate too much, missed workouts, or felt frustrated by slow progress. But unlike before, I didn't let those bad days define me. I didn't quit. I reminded myself that progress wasn't linear. That even on my worst days, I was still miles ahead of where I had been. Because I was still trying. And that was the real transformation. 6 months after that first walk, I stepped on the scale and saw a number I hadn't seen in years. I had lost 40 pounds. I had more energy. My skin looked clearer. I could run, not just walk, but run, for the first time in years. But the real transformation wasn't just physical. It was the way I carried myself. The way I believed in myself. I wasn't just losing weight. I was finding myself. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared of what came next. Because I knew, this wasn't the end of my journey. It was just the beginning. If you had asked me 5 years ago if I was happy, I would have lied. I would have forced a smile, made a joke, and quickly changed the subject. But in the quiet moments, when no one was around, I knew the truth. I was miserable. I was 34 years old, living in Austin, Texas, a city filled with runners, cyclists, and smoothie-drinking fitness lovers. Meanwhile, I avoided mirrors, cameras, and even catching my reflection in store windows. At my heaviest, I was 265 pounds. But it wasn't just the weight, it was the exhaustion, the aching joints, the breathlessness after climbing a single flight of stairs. I had made my world small, confined to my apartment, my car, and my office. Dating? I had given up. Shopping? A nightmare. Even friendship suffered. I made excuses to avoid social events because I hated how I looked. I told myself I didn't have time to work out, but the truth was, I didn't believe I could change. I had tried before. Diets, gym memberships, detox teas. Every time, I quit. Every time, I failed. Then, one night, everything changed. I was sitting in my apartment with a fast food bag on my lap, scrolling through social media. My thumb hovered over a photo of an old friend standing on a beach, laughing, her hair blowing in the wind. Something in me cracked. I used to be like that. I used to love the ocean. When was the last time I had felt that free? I looked around at the empty takeout containers, the soda bottles, the clothes I hadn't folded in weeks. My life wasn't just heavy, it was stagnant. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not just a few tears, ugly crying, the kind that leaves you gasping for air. I wasn't okay. And for the first time, I admitted that I didn't want to live like this anymore. The next morning, something inside me shifted. I didn't have a grand plan or a perfect strategy. I just knew I had to start. So, I put on sneakers and went for a walk. It wasn't much. Just a slow, painful lap around my block. My knees ached, my breath was uneven, and I wanted to quit after 5 minutes. But I didn't. And the next morning, I did it again. I knew if I wanted this to last, I had to do it differently this time. No extreme diets. No unrealistic workout plans. Just small changes. I started by swapping my afternoon soda for water. I packed my lunch instead of ordering fast food. I walked every morning, slowly increasing the distance. The first 2 weeks were brutal. My body felt stiff, uncooperative. I wasn't seeing results, and I was tempted to give up. But I didn't. Instead of focusing on weight loss, I focused on building a routine. Instead of obsessing over the scale, I paid attention to how I felt. And one day, about a month in, I realized something shocking. I felt different. I had more energy. My morning walks weren't as exhausting. My clothes fit a little better, not dramatically, but enough for me to notice. For the first time, I started to believe, maybe I could really do this. So, I kept going. 3 months in, I stepped into a gym for the first time in years. At first, I felt out of place, surrounded by fit, athletic people who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Meanwhile, I struggled just to adjust the machines. I was sure everyone was judging me. But the truth? No one cared. They were too busy focusing on themselves. The only person judging me was me. And that realization changed everything. I started slow, walking on the treadmill, lifting light weights. I didn't push myself too hard. I didn't try to be perfect. I just showed up. And showing up, day after day, changed me. I didn't just get stronger physically, I became mentally tougher. There were bad days. Days when I slipped back into old habits. Days when I ate too much, missed workouts, or felt frustrated by slow progress. But for the first time, I didn't let those bad days define me. Because I wasn't on a diet, I was changing my life. 6 months after that first walk, I stepped on the scale and saw a number I hadn't seen in years. I had lost 40 pounds. But the real transformation wasn't in the number. It was in the way I carried myself. The way I spoke. The way I believed in myself. I no longer obsessed over food. I no longer avoided mirrors. I no longer told myself that love, happiness, and success were only for other people. I had spent years believing I wasn't worthy of a different life. But I was. I always had been. And that realization changed everything. It's been 2 years since that night in my apartment. 2 years since I sat in the dark, feeling like my life was already over. 2 years since I took that first, shaky step towards something better. Now, I wake up early, not because I have to, but because I want to. I go for runs at Lady Bird Lake, moving with a strength I never thought I'd have. The woman who once struggled to climb stairs can now run 3 miles for fun. And it feels incredible. Losing weight changed my body, but more importantly, it changed my entire life. I lost 90 pounds. But I gained confidence. Strength. A love for movement. A belief in myself that I never had before. The transformation wasn't just physical, it was mental, emotional, and even spiritual. I no longer hide in the background of my own life. I no longer avoid cameras, social events, or my own reflection. I no longer treat food as my escape. I eat to fuel my body, not to numb my emotions. I move because I love the way it makes me feel, not because I hate the way I look. For the first time in my life, I am not at war with myself. The most unexpected part of my journey? The way it inspired others. My best friends started going to the gym with me. My co-workers began bringing healthier lunches, inspired by what I packed for myself. But the most meaningful change? My mom. She had struggled with her weight her whole life, just like I had. She never believed she could change. But when she saw what I was doing, something shifted in her. "Do you think I could do it too?" she asked one evening. I smiled. "I know you can." Now, we go on walks together every Sunday. She's lost 30 pounds. She's happier. Stronger. And I realize now that my journey was never just about me. By changing my life, I showed the people I love that they could change theirs too. People always ask me if I miss my old life. If I ever want to go back to the way things were. The answer is no. Because I didn't just lose weight, I found myself. I found the girl who loved riding her bike until sunset. I found the woman who takes up space without apologizing. I found a strength I never knew I had. And I will never let her go again. This is just the beginning. I'm still learning, still growing, still becoming the best version of myself. But now, I know one thing for sure, I was never meant to live a small life. And neither are you.